Hello, and welcome to Dyslexia Devoted, the podcast dedicated to building awareness, understanding, and strategies to help those with dyslexia. I'm your host, Lisa Parnello, dyslexia therapist and founder of Parnello Education Services. Join me as we dive into today's episode of Dyslexia Devoted. Hello there. I have a funny desire to say good morning because it is pretty early in the morning right now when I'm recording this, but I realize that you may not be listening to this in the morning. It could be in the evening, could be at the gym, late at night, who knows? But hello, and I hope you're having a fantastic day or will have a fantastic day if it's just the beginning for you. Welcome to episode number 95, The Story Continues. So this episode's going to be short because I'm giving you a homework assignment. I know. I believe I said last week I don't believe in homework. But in the world of a podcast, I do believe in homework in the form of assigning other podcasts for you to listen to. So yesterday I was driving back to my mom's house from my snowy cabin in the woods this weekend, and I was listening to 3 more episodes of Sold a Story. Now, I can't remember when episode number 8 came out, but I knew 9 and 10 were coming, and so I went ahead and listened to them this week, and I was so excited about it. And if you are a newer listener, you may not have heard me ranting about how amazing Sold a Story is. It is a fantastic NPR Reports podcast about the reading system in American schools. And if you haven't listened to it, you absolutely should. And if you have listened to it, go back and listen to the new episodes. Because originally there were a certain amount of episodes as they did all of their reporting, and then it had such a huge response that there became more episodes to follow up on the story. Now, as a teacher for kids with dyslexia, I have some pretty strong opinions about reading instruction. And mostly because what is good instruction for all kids is mandatory instruction for kids with dyslexia. So when the main school classrooms are not getting good reading instruction, that means the kids with dyslexia have no hope at all. And that breaks my heart every time. So before you go jumping on to Sold a Story, let me tell you a couple of thoughts that I have on my end. One of the things that really resonated with me happened in episode 10. Which is when they made the comment that you don't need to teach all the kids all the rules. They will eventually start to figure out the pattern for themselves, and they will synthesize all of their information, and they will figure it out. They don't need to go quite as into detail as some people are doing. People go deeper and go a little overboard, more than what the kids really need to know at their age level, which I wholeheartedly agree with, but also have a caveat. If you are a kid with dyslexia, you may never figure out those patterns that no one explicitly taught you. As I was thinking about that part of the story, I was getting kind of bothered by the fact that they're saying you don't really need to go very explicitly on everything. The kids will eventually figure it out. And then I had to check myself and realize that this is a podcast about normal children. Not to say anybody with dyslexia is not normal. I love them all. Neurodiversity is a fantastic thing. But I mean kids who do not have learning differences don't actually need every single thing spelled out for them. They can usually figure it out eventually. But kids with learning differences, on the other hand, especially those with severe dyslexia, may never figure it out all on their own unless somebody explicitly teaches them. I know several kids who have been discontinued from their special education services as soon as they hit what is quote-unquote grade level, and then they get no more special education instruction. The problem is, what is at grade level right now is not what's at grade level for next year and the year after. I see many times where kids are in special education, they do a great job, everything's going well, and then they stop services because it's going well. So that's not really how the world works. Sometimes when something's going well, you should keep doing it. Because if you stop instruction before, let's say, they get to vowel teams, suddenly that's going to get a lot harder next year if nobody ever explicitly taught those things. And I see it too many times where kids are pulled from services because they're doing well, and they're not done getting the core instruction that they actually need. And listening to the podcast, I had to remind myself the difference between special education and not special education. One year, I went to summer camp as an adult because I had 2 kids with severe ADHD and learning differences that the summer camp said the kids can't come if you don't have an aide to help them. And so these 2 boys were put into the same group of children at the summer camp, and I followed the camp counselor around. The camp counselor did their thing, and then I just managed the behaviors of the kiddos who were struggling or needed a break or were being disruptive or whatever the deal was at the moment. And then, because I'm a teacher, I was already a full-fledged certified teacher with many years under my belt before I got this little summer camp job. It was just a way to, my tutoring business was really small still, and I could, do some out-of-the-box ways of supporting kids. And who doesn't want to go to summer camp? Come on. Anyway, these other kids, especially these adorable little girls, would come up to me and ask me things, and I would answer their questions, and then they'd go on their merry way, or they'd ask for help for stuff, and I'd give them directions, and they would just follow them. And I was mesmerized about what it was like to teach kids that, listen to you on the first try and understand something on the first try. What is that about? I've never had that before. And then that's what I had to remind myself of as I was listening to episode 10 of Sold a Story. The amount of instruction that typical kids need is not the same as a kid with a severe learning difference. And I have to remind myself that what the kids that come to my office need is usually the severe instruction. They are not the kids who will usually just figure it out. Although I've had a few of those. I have had a couple of them where I teach them for 6 months to a year, and all of a sudden everything clicks. They're like, oh, that's how it works? All right, cool. And they go on their merry way. They're able to synthesize enough information to figure out the rest all on their own without needing me. But there's also a reason why I do what I do. If there is a kid with a severe need, there has to be somebody who knows how to help them. But the biggest thing is, if you have the right kind of instruction in core general education classrooms, far fewer kids need special education or people like me. If you have the right instruction in a homeroom class, you don't need as many pull-out services. You don't need as many people going to tutors. In fact, there's an entire district of kids that it kind of breaks my heart. One side of the tracks, so to speak, well, I guess maybe literally, there are train tracks. All the kids' parents can afford tutors, and those kids do really well. The other side of the tracks, with the other side of the school district where no one can afford tutors, they don't do as well. And then they all get put in the same high school, and there's a very clear difference between the haves and have-nots. And I don't just mean money, I also mean education. There's one side of the tracks where the kids can read, and the other side, not so much, because they all use the same core instruction, but the one side can afford tutors, and the other side can't. So that's where you get a massive discrepancy in those who can read and those who can't read. So if we can change that core instruction in the main classroom, it gives it a much more equal playing field, and there's a lot more equity in the world, and a lot more good humans, because when you can read books, you can learn things and invent things and do all sorts of cool stuff that if you can't read, you can't do those things. And going on the equity piece, I am so excited. Sold a Story now has a Spanish version. So if you have somebody who you think could really benefit from listening to Sold a Story, but they need to be able to access it in Spanish, they've now have a translated version with a reporter who is fluent in Spanish doing a lot of the reporting or the translating of the original reporting. And I'm so excited to give that as a resource to other people, because sometimes not everyone speaks English. I live in California. There is a border with another country here that speaks Spanish most of the time. And also families who live here, but all of their families speak Spanish. So they're often much more fluent in their native language. And I'm so excited to know that this awesome reporting is now available in more than one language. All right, I yammered on more than I expected on this. Clearly, I have really big, strong feelings about this podcast and how much you need to go listen to Sold a Story. So I will link it here in the show notes. I will give you access to the Sold a Story link, as well as the link to the Spanish version of Sold a Story. And I really hope you go listen to that right now, because it is such an amazing thing for spreading the word about learning differences and how reading instruction needs to be in our schools. And it's not as easy and perfect as we would like it to be, because even once you know better and you try to do better, it doesn't always work so great at first. So that's one of the things I love about these last couple episodes, is it points out how it doesn't always go exactly how you want it to, but progress is progress at least. That's it for today. I'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode. If you want to learn even more about dyslexia, check out parnelloeducation.com/courses. See you next time.